You have three separate debts. You do not have the cash on hand to pay them all off at once, but you do have a little bit of extra money in your budget every month. The problem is figuring out where to aim it. Most people try to attack their debt randomly. They throw extra cash at the account that feels the most stressful that week, or the one with the biggest balance. That is a guess, and guessing does not eliminate debt. When you guess, you inevitably end up making minimum payments across the board while trying to figure out a plan. And paying the minimum is a trap. Let us look at a standard credit card balance of $1,200 at a 22% interest rate. This diagram shows how time and interest work against you. If you make a standard minimum payment of $25, the monthly interest charge eats up $22 of that payment. You only knock $3 off the actual principal. Bouncing between debts randomly while interest consumes your payments ensures that your balances stay exactly where they are. Escaping requires a calculated strategy. There are two legitimate, proven frameworks to get to zero: the Debt Snowball and the Debt Avalanche. You might recognize the person in this photo, Dave Ramsey. He popularized the Debt Snowball method and brought it into mainstream personal finance. These two strategies attack the same problem from completely different angles. One is optimized mathematically to save you the most cash possible. The other is optimized psychologically to keep you motivated. We're going to compare them using real numbers so you can evaluate the trade-offs. Remember, this is an educational comparison to help you understand the mechanics, not personalized financial advice. The spreadsheet will always tell you to take one path, but human behavior is complicated. The right method depends entirely on what actually keeps you on track. The Debt Snowball operates on one strict rule: list all your debts from the smallest balance to the largest. You simply ignore the interest rates entirely. This diagram shows what that looks like in practice. You put the $800 store card at the top, followed by the $1,200 credit card, and finally the $5,000 personal loan. You set up automatic minimum payments on the bottom two debts. Then you take every extra dollar you have in your budget and aggressively funnel it into the $800 account until it is gone. Once that first debt hits zero, you take the money you were paying on it and roll it entirely into the next smallest balance. The payment size grows as it moves down the list. Targeting the smallest balance means you eliminate an entire account quickly. That minimum payment is freed up, and you get a massive dopamine hit of visible progress. That feeling of progress has measurable results. Research published in the Harvard Business Review found that people who focused on eliminating one small debt at a time were significantly more likely to become totally debt-free. The snowball method trades mathematical efficiency for psychological momentum. You will pay more in total interest over time, but you buy the motivation required to stay in the game. The debt avalanche takes the opposite approach. You list all your debts from the highest interest rate to the lowest, regardless of how big or small the balances are. This diagram takes our exact same three debts and applies the avalanche rule. Now the $1,200 balance at 22% sits at the top. The 14% debt is second, and the 8% debt is last. You pay minimums on everything else and attack the 22% debt first, because it is the specific account costing you the most money in interest every single month. This visual shows the mathematical drain as two leaking buckets. Every extra dollar you throw at 22% debt saves you 22 cents per year. Throwing it at 14% debt only saves you 14 cents. The avalanche plugs the biggest leak first. The drawback is entirely behavioral. If your highest interest rate is attached to a massive balance, you might be grinding for months or even years before you finally close an account. The avalanche is the ultimate mathematical optimizer. It keeps the most capital in your pocket, but it requires immense willpower to endure long stretches without a visible win. To understand exactly how much money is on the line, we have to look at a scenario where the two methods disagree completely. Let us say you have a $500 balance at 18% and a larger $3,500 balance at 28%. This chart maps the divergence. The snowball method targets the $500 account because it is the smallest. The avalanche targets the $3,500 account because it has the highest rate. Over the full payoff period, choosing the avalanche in this scenario saves you roughly $400 to $600 in total interest. But look at the timeline. The snowball method zeroes out that first account entirely in about 2 months, while the avalanche side still shows two active debts for a long time. This is the definitive trade-off you have to evaluate. You need to decide if saving $500 over the next 2 years is worth delaying your first feeling of victory today. Picking the right strategy comes down to taking an honest look at your personality and your past financial behavior. This flowchart maps out the ideal profiles. If you are highly disciplined, you never miss a payment, or your interest rates are wildly different from one another, choose the Avalanche. You will maximize your cash savings and easily stay the course. If you have struggled to stick to long-term budgets before, you feel easily burned out by your balances, or you need visible progress to stay engaged, you must choose the Snowball. For those who want efficiency but know they need a jumpstart, there is a third option, the hybrid approach. You execute the Snowball method on one single small debt to get an immediate psychological win. Once that account is closed, you take your momentum and permanently switch all your extra funds over to the Avalanche method for the rest of your payoff. The mathematically perfect plan is useless if you get frustrated and quit in month 3. The optimal choice is always the one you will actually stick with until the end. Regardless of which path you pick, there is one inescapable rule they both share. Neither of these methods works unless you are actively paying more than the minimums. You have to find extra capital. That means slashing unnecessary expenses, taking on extra work to increase your income, or selling things you don't need. You have to force a change in your cash flow. Choosing a method gets you organized, but applying that extra cash every single month without interruption is what actually kills the debt. Pick your strategy today. Write down the exact debt you are starting with, set up automatic minimum payments for everything else, and throw your extra cash at the target. If you want to see exactly where debt payoff fits into a complete financial plan, our financial order of operations video shows you where this step lands in the broader picture. The balances that feel permanent right now will disappear. You just have to assign them a payoff date and start attacking.